We just turned up on the spot, and Henry Chevalier Guild was there, the owner of Aspel's. This was near Christmas.
Wow.
And we just stopped, and I just explained who I was, what I was doing. And he was phenomenal. He gave me his time to this like cheeky upstart English fella, Suffolk resident. And he just basically told me to...
Hello, my name is Ria Windcaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world. Bringing us into episode 428 of Cider Chat, we heard from Stephen Schuurman of Winchester Ciderworks, based in Winchester, Virginia. It was kind of a little bit of a teaser because I want you to hear the full story told from the top to the bottom and some of the advice that he got during this happenstance meetup with the founder of Aspel Cider in the UK. It was just so spot on. So it was really gave me pause because I think that when you give advice to somebody, one piece of advice I heard recently was when you want to meet with somebody, if you say, can I meet with you? You're kind of leaving it kind of wide open. But if you say to somebody, can I have 11 minutes of your time? They might be kind of more inclined to say, yeah, versus 15 or 20 minutes. Like that kind of like weird, uneven number. It just gives you a goal to work towards. And yeah, I always kind of like that kind of cool info. So you will find out what he said to Stephen coming up. He's our featured guest, and I was super stoked because he reached out to me and said, I'm this Englishman, and I'm going to be making the cider for Virginia's 250th anniversary of the War of Independence. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, I'm interested. That sounds crazy to me. Like, how does it happen that Virginia is having an Englishman make a cider for, like the July 4th, kind of like the celebration of independence from England? It's just like one of those crazy, twisty things that I love. And he's just so fun. He has like the passion behind it. He has it in his DNA. Let's face it, anybody from the UK, they get bragging rights to be able to talk about the fact that they, as a country, have some of the highest consumption of cider in the world. He brings that to the page. He also brings his love of music and turning musicians on and how he's working his business. There's a lot to glean from here. And he's making a blend of like modern styles with an English touch. So you're going to enjoy this one. Coming out of Virginia, what's not to love? There's so much happening down in that state for apples. And the cool thing was Winchester, Virginia, that's the north end of the Shenandoah Valley. He gave me some interesting info that I didn't realize. So yeah, stay tuned for that too. Walking through the orchard. Meanwhile, while you're listening, do know that this episode gets released on October 9th, the day before my birthday. I am currently in the UK. Don't know how I'm going to be celebrating my birthday, but I know it's going to be fun. And I've just been touring around, checking out the sites here, speaking to makers, and looking at setting up a UK cider tour. If you've been following Cider Chat through and through, you know that I just finished the French cider tour, and then I headed over to West Country to do what I call a reconnaissance. I need to have those feet on the ground to kind of get lost in the back roads and to just find out the perfect mix to offer up as a cider tour. If you are interested in coming along on a Totally Cider tour with me and other fun-loving cider friends, do send an email to info@ciderchat.com. We currently are already compiling a list for the next French cider tour. So that's what we call a wait list. And to get your name on the wait list just means just sending an email that you are interested. And please do serious inquiries because, we want to make sure that folks can follow through and, thinking, yeah, I could do that for 2025. And what will happen is we will release the next tour first to that group on the wait list. And we kind of go down on first order, first come, first serve. Try to do it as, well, I don't know, as fair as possible is really always the goal in my book. So again, if you are interested going on a cider tour, and yes, they are magical, fun, and really just amazing. What can I say? Just follow along on the social media that's been pouring out of Cider Chat since I first arrived in France and now am in the UK, and to get a sense of some of the experiences that you could share too. These are like bucket list experiences, and we try to really make it worthwhile for your time in such a delicious way. And as always, thank you to all the amazing patrons at the Cider Chat Patreon page and those who hit the donate button at ciderchat.com. You too can become a patron by Googling Cider Chat and Patreon. That's spelled Patreon. And now, without further ado, I invite you to grab a glass and join this chat with Stephen Schuurman of Winchester Ciderworks, based in Winchester, Virginia.
In my former life, I was a plastics engineer, but I'd always made cider and wine at home in England. I'm originally from the town of Beccles in Suffolk, and my company, who I work for, asked me to come out here to start training and generally setting up our company in the Winchester area. So I was busy with my other job, and the wine industry in Virginia was getting a foothold and becoming bigger. So I was going out to UC Davis in California to learn viticulture and doing some wine work, on becoming more of a professional winemaker. But at the time, there were so many people getting into the wine industry, and the cider over here back then was mass-produced and very sweet. And I really missed my ciders from back in England. And I lived next door to an orchard and began scrumping some of those apples. So climbing over the fence and borrowing some apples. And then I bought all my homemade equipment and started making cider for myself. Traditionally, more like Eastern Counties, drier cider. And everybody over here started drinking it. And then they couldn't believe that this was a cider because they'd been used to the high sugar, sweeter varieties of cider over here. So I thought that might be something in there because there was definitely a market for it. And this was around about 2011. And I was put into contact with a local apple grower who had a facility just outside Winchester here in Virginia. And she had been looking for somebody to make hard cider, as they call it over here. And she had a press, the facility and everything. So late 2011, early 2012, we went into partnership. I was still doing my other job full time. Mm-hmm. And I would finish that work at 3:30. Then I come up here to our new facility and start pressing apples. We had our own press, and that's where it all basically started.
And do you have like history in terms of drinking cider prior to that?
Oh, yes.
And a big smile lit up on his face.
We were surrounded by so many great ciders back then, and a 2-liter bottle of Strongbow was most people's cider of choice for my age back then. And I absolutely loved it. I love cider. Being from an apple growing area in Suffolk, we used to make our own ciders at home, and like a natural progression for me to bring some of those ciders from England over to the US.
Of course. Let's give folks an idea where Winchester Ciderworks is located.
We are in the far northwest of Virginia, close to the West Virginia Panhandle, 45 miles from Maryland. It's probably about 65 miles west of Washington, D.C. So we're close to the what they call the 81 corridor, Interstate 81. So it's good for commerce when we're shipping to other states. Winchester used to be the apple capital of the United States. We've proudly got the world's largest apple storage building in Winchester. And sadly, the apple industry, mostly in the Shenandoah Valley, where we are situated at the very northern end of, is suffering some pretty hard times lately.
The world's largest, or the U.S. largest, like apple storage. Is that what I heard you say?
They actually have painted on the building the world's largest apple storage.
Wow.
It is about a mile from where I'm sitting. It is a huge building. Whether that has been superseded or not, I don't know, but they still proclaim that.
Is it still being used for storing apples?
Not as much as it used to be. There is still apple storage going on there, and that's fairly close to the large White House apple production company who do apple sauces and juices.
Very good. So here you are, you're in the U.S., coming from the U.K. You have this background, this kind of like almost like in your DNA from drinking cider. Yep. When you came to the U.S., what were you thinking about in terms of stylistically making cider? And that kind of lead us into how are you making that now? I have some cans behind me and also in a bottle. So you really do like an eclectic mix here.
Yeah. Originally, it was to just make sure that the ciders were not sugar bombs. You know, it's because it's more nuanced than that. So I didn't want totally bone dry ciders because I think that would have been too much of a shock to the system for the US drinker to go from what we traditionally call a sweet cider to something which was bone dry. I think that may have scared a lot of consumers off.
Right.
So I wanted something which I call is off dry. So we'd have a very low amount of residual sugar still left in. I do some bone dry ones, but the best selling ones are the ones which have a hint of residual sugar.
Mm-hmm. You must have seen a bit of a shift now with the palate for drinkers, or are you seeing that?
Yes, definitely. I can categorically say, without exception, everybody who drinks one of my ciders for the first time will look at me and say, oh, this isn't sweet. And so I'm not criticizing sweet ciders at all, but I'm just saying that the American consumers are definitely trending towards a more dry style of cider.
And that's music to a lot of producers listening right now to their ears, and probably a lot of cider drinkers that are kind of in the know. But I absolutely agree with you. You have to kind of, especially from a business perspective, hit it on all the different corners of the park, for sure.
But that's a very good point from a business perspective. If I was a millionaire and just doing this for the sake of it, I would make probably a different style of cider, and not all of them. I wouldn't add any fruits to them. I just make pure apple ciders across the board. But the market over here dictate flavorings, and I never use any extracts. And we grow a lot of our fruits, which I infuse in a lot of our ciders. But if I had my own personal way, I would make just apple ciders across the board.
A business person can't necessarily do everything they would do for themselves. You have to speak to the market. Is there any novelty at all in the fact that you have the British accent and you're coming from a country that's considered the grand poobah of drinking cider in the world?
A lot of people think I'm Australian, which is weird to my Australian friends. And because of my Suffolk accent, I will explain to them about what it means to us in Great Britain and Ireland as in our heritage. Like you said earlier, it's in our DNA. It really is in our DNA. And, I've been drinking cider from, a young age, and it's part of my life. And that is why I came back to it rather than doing the winemaking, because my love of cider is, I want to spread that love to as many new consumers and new customers for us as possible. It's a journey, it really is. Take from the old world traditions and everything.
What is the setup at your cidery?
We moved facilities earlier this year, and I pressed our own juice for the 11 years before that, and we simply didn't have time to press the juice ourselves. And our press was a Buca press from 1986. It was the last one in the US, and we were constantly fixing it and making sure it worked. The yield was always pretty good, but it was such a lot of work. So if we were going to press for ourselves, the most we could press was around about 1,800, 2,000 gallons a day. So it's 7,500, 8,000 litres. This took like 3 or 4 days of our time away from doing other stuff. Right. So when we moved into the new building, we had to come up with a plan about getting juice from other suppliers. And I really wanted to get all our juice from Virginia. So we decided to get our juice from our friends in Winchester, the Glaze family. Mm-hmm. And they've been supplying our juice for the last year, just over a year. My main cider is a 5 varietal blend. And back when we started, we would press the main variety, which was around about 50%, and then the other 4 varieties would be pressed separately, and it was pain to blend them all back.
That makes a lot of sense. We see this a lot, and it's a nice marriage between a local orchard. They've been growing apples for many years.
Yeah.
You still have the terroir, you're local. Yep. So, yeah, I think this is good for folks to hear that this is very possible and not unusual.
We're basically buying the same apples from the same area which have been operated here for 4 or 5 generations. And we want to continue because the apple industry, it's suffering, and we want to keep orchards in Frederick County. We don't want to see them having houses built on them, because the land is worth more than the apple industry. So that's incredibly important for me to keep the Frederick County apples, Winchester being in Frederick County in Virginia, the apple industry as strong and robust as possible.
That's important to me too.
Yeah.
So the apples themselves, what type of varieties are you primarily working with? And especially being an Englishman, you have some outstanding apples from the UK that are coveted, but the US is a little bit different. What do you see there?
I'm originally from in Suffolk. We have mainly dessert style apples. We're not as fortunate as the West Country,
right,
where they have all these phenomenal apple varietals. It's just where I grew up in was about 30 miles away from Aspel's cider in Suffolk.
Yeah,
I was with my father, and he drove me down there one day, and we just turned up on the spot, and Henry Chevalier Guild was there, the owner of Aspel's. This was near Christmas.
Wow.
And we just stopped, and I just explained who I was, what I was doing, and he was phenomenal. He gave me his time to this cheeky upstart English fella, Suffolk resident, and he just basically told me to work on the recipe, get a cider which I'm happy with, which I want to drink, and get it consistent. He told me, he said, this will take you about 5 years. He said, just get that consistency. So I did. I followed his plan. That lesson taught me how to work with these culinary dessert style apples and to get the blend which I really want. And the major blend for those, the variety was an apple called Gold Rush, which I absolutely love working with. It's a superb apple.
Wow. I just love that advice too. He gave you a set time, 5 years.
Yeah.
Doable.
Yeah, I will never forget that. That advice was incredibly instrumental for my decision making. So for example, in the first year, we didn't make anything because my slow fermentation and aging process. So we didn't actually sell anything to 2012.
So let's go back to that. So your slow fermentation aging process, is that kind of true across the board, or are you kind of pushing out some things in a more modern style making?
Yes, no. I like to ferment over about 4 weeks at 55 degrees. I think it brings out some fantastic flavors, aromas in the apples. And I also do some spontaneous fermentations. Okay. Like the shandy, you have that as a spontaneous fermentation. Mm-hmm. So, and I do some others, which I just let them naturally ferment over several months. I do a natural malolactic fermentation. You just can't, in my opinion, rush a cider. So I just like to age mine, just depending on the cider I'm making, the style, which one in our lineup. I'd like to age it for several months. We rarely filter because everything is cleared out by them, and the difference in taste is very noticeable. Very noticeable. It's just something that worked for me, and I kind of stumbled upon it accidentally. I'm not going to say I'm this genius. I'm not at all. I'm just somebody who if something works, I'm going to stick to it. And it just worked for me by aging our ciders anything up to 6 to 9 months, actually. So it just worked for me, and it just smooths out the cider so much. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at a finished pH on my ciders around about 3.5 to 3.6. And, I've pressed Gold Rush, which have been around 3 pH, which is insanely acidic. But with the aging process, to take up to 3.5, 3.6, I think for me personally, that is my sweet spot of ciders, which I enjoy drinking. It's what we found that a lot of our consumers and customers that they prefer.
So a lot of ciders, for those folks out there in Ciderville to know, will have the acid. It's like a little bit sharper, and some folks just absolutely adore that. And then the MLF, or the malolactic fermentation, will really soften the mouthfeel. And Stephen's doing it through aging. Are you dropping the temperature at all for that?
No, we used to store them in a subterranean area, which the temperature was around about 50 to 60 degrees at all times. Yeah. But now we put them in our temperature controlled tanks at our new facility. And we just keep them at a certain temperature, fill them up as much as possible, get some either argon or CO2 on the top, so we don't have 3,000 or 4,000 gallons of vinegar. And that has worked for us.
I am a big fan of malolactic fermentation myself. I just love the mouthfeel. And I have to tell you, I am getting thirsty here as you talk about this. I'm thinking it might be time to open one of these and talk about some of your styles. So you sent me a nice little assortment of ciders here. I have them right behind me. What do you think we should go for first here?
Probably, as we've just been talking about it, and it's a classic example of mallow, it would be Malice. That would be my recommendation.
Right. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna hold this can up to the screen here. Big, beautiful yellow apple, kind of on a chalice, and maybe you're playing with Malice chalice. Tell me a little bit about the label.
It looks a bit aggressive. It's more of like a tattoo design, really, because Malice is the Latin for apple, and we are basically doing a malicious act to the apples by crushing them, pressing them, and juicing them. We just thought that Malice was a good play on words. This is my original cider, so it hasn't changed much since 2012. It's maybe slightly drier than it originally came out.
Alrighty, so I'm seeing it's 6.5% on the can here. Right on the top it says 100% vegan, very low in sugar. On the back it says a platinum winner. You're really showing here the Winchester Ciderworks on the back, a nice little write-up about it, using apples grown locally, and a kind of personal. You say enjoy, you have your full name there, and you identify yourself as a cider maker. That's a nice label presentation.
All I need to do is look at the can and it explains exactly what it is. They are very low in sugar, residual sugar, and we feel that's important because it's quite scary how much sugar is in some products these days.
I'm going to open it here and kind of get away from my computer for a second. Oh, kind of popped out good. I'm glad it wasn't too close.
Nope.
Let's do a little pour here.
So it's very lightly carbonated. In technical terms, we put about 2.1 volumes of CO2, or I think it's about 4 grams a litre CO2. Mm-hmm. Because we want some light bubbles.
Well, cheers.
Cheers. I hope you enjoy it. There's no pressure on me now, is there?
Everybody always asks me, what's your favorite cider? The next one in my glass.
Exactly, yeah. I get that asked all the time, which is mine in my lineup, and it's like Sophie's Choice.
Oh, very drinkable.
Thank you. It isn't too acidic, it isn't too tannic, but you wanted that session note so you can sit with a friend, have several of them. You're not going to get many hangovers with them. I've tried that theory, and because of the levels of sugar and tannins in that, it's very good.
What's interesting, you were mentioning culinary apples, and so folks listening, when you have like that kind of classic UK cider or really high tannic cider, you get kind of a more leather, and sometimes it could be like a horse lick, kind of like, I love all that. I love all that. you know, like a dryness. But here you're dealing with culinary. You get a little bit of that astringency, and it's very bright. Yeah, and I recommend kind of like letting it open, let it aerate a little bit before drinking.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good point. Yeah.
Do we have a barrel aged in here?
We do not.
The black currant, the 522. I thought that had.
No, that's infused with black. I add some black currant juice. Yeah,
Okay.
That one's probably the most difficult cider I made.
Oh.
It's black currant concentrate to it, which we drank as children in England. And oh God, that's a gorgeous combination. So I wanted to make one from scratch. We grew our own black currants. I also got the juice from a black currant farm in New York State, which was the only one in the country, I believe, because black currant's being banned in the US for over 200 years because they were believed to have destroyed a lot of trees. And then they found out it wasn't true. And I believe that's still banned in some states. We couldn't grow them again in Virginia until like the late 80s or early 90s, I believe. So, but the tartness of the black currant, it made it a challenge. So it took me about 4 months to get that right. And I didn't think it was more done for personal consumption. And because Americans not being totally familiar with black currants, we were shocked about how well it is done. And we've been making it for, I think it came out in about 2017. And we've been making it ever since then. And it is like being top seller for us. And it's been amazing. I love it. And my father-in-law, who didn't really drink much, that's virtually all he drinks now. He absolutely loves it. So,
my goodness, wow, that's wonderful. I'm going to crack it open. Let's crack it open here and see what we got, because that blush and everything just sounds absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Also in a can, and it's saying 5.9%. Oh yeah, look at that color, the carbonation. Kind of come off of the glass a little bit before sipping. Always a good technique so you don't sneeze like me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can smell the currants.
The smell of black currant juice is one of the greatest joys on the planet. It is just heavenly, and
I love it.
I'm trying to. The apple always comes first, so I'm trying to. There's a lot of fruit flavored or herb flavored, whatever you're putting into your ciders. I don't want that to overtake the balance of the juice itself. A cider and not a seltzer, so you're not getting predominantly the taste of the black currant. There should be a marriage between the two, and it's a difficult balance to get right. Blend them and marry them with the apples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's called the 522.
That's the road that we used to be on, and the sign was practice for some of the locals with the shotguns.
Of course.
Hence why, that's the road that leads from Winchester into West Virginia. And there were some interesting signs on the road, so we thought that would be fun to replicate that.
Very nice local touch there. It's become known to me that Winchester Ciderworks is making the cider for Virginia's 250th anniversary of the War of Independence. So tell us a little bit about that. How did they select that, and having Englishmen do that? I mean, let's face it, it was kind of like, the America at that time separating from the Church of England, but the country of England.
I had an email flyer come through, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I was reading through it, and 250 years ago, cider was drank by a large proportion of the population. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and George Washington gave cider out on his campaign trail. So I thought, we really need to have the drink of choice at the time, made by an Englishman, which is ironic. And so I submitted it to their committee and spoke to a couple of people, and then they were like, oh, this sounds a good idea. Then it went to another couple of people. So we had meetings. Yes, this sounds a good idea. And then another two, I think it was like 7 months later. We all know how slow government works, but 7 months later, I received an email and saying, yes, we think this is a great idea. Would you make the cider for us? So I was like, yeah, I'd love to. So it was then, what kind of cider am I going to make? And I didn't really want to make one in the style of something that you would drink in 1776. So I don't think that would sell too much. So I came up with a plan. It's going to be the alcohol percentage around about 7.5%, but I didn't want it to go over the 7% threshold where I have to pay more tax and get involved with the government.
That's right along the lines of the War of Independence, not paying more taxes.
Exactly, isn't it? The irony is just amazing. So if I can keep it just below 7, so it's more of like an imperial style cider.
Yeah,
it's going to be 1, maybe 2 apple varietals with some crab apples added into the mix to give it a little bit of bite. We're now coming up with a name for it. I'm very excited about doing this. And then I believe they're actually going to send some over to Paris in 2026 because there's a big delegation from Virginia going over to France. Probably is that thanks for helping them during the War of Independence. And we will see what our French colleagues think of it.
Oh, lovely. When you said you're going to make it in like an imperial style, I don't know about that. I mean, think about it. It's kind of like a little bit of a edge in there, bringing out an imperial style for celebration of the War of Independence. I just picked that up.
You're a very smart lady. You've like shot through my defenses. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't intentional, but imperial style ciders now are gaining a lot of traction. Yeah. And it would like kill 2 birds with 1 stone, really. But yeah, well done on spotting that one.
A little tongue in cheek there, much fun.
Yeah.
And that's what it has to be, really. Kind of creating the apple creates a boundaryless world in many ways, but it's also fun to play with those boundaries too.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, we don't take ourselves very seriously here at all. We listen to our customers and consumers all the time. And I get asked to bring out some weird and wonderful things or just nod and smile. And I said, we'll think about that one. We went from like having 8 main varieties down to 3 with a seasonal rotator. So the next one coming out is called Cinder Wonderland. It's naturally fermented. And I aged that on cinnamon sticks, Sri Lankan cinnamon sticks or Ceylon cinnamon sticks, which are fantastic, for several months, and then take those out. I'll add 4 different spices, leave that for another month, and then we'll can and keg it. And now, as somebody who didn't like cinnamon too much, it's all I drank last winter. I'm so proud of this cider. The cinnamon is like so subtle, and the spices are so subtle. It's akin to like a Belgian beer with a cider. It's just, and I love it, but it's very intensive to make.
Is there a flagship cider for Winchester?
I would say Malice. We've sold tons of it over 12 years. It's stood the test of time. It's pure apple.
And it's in cans, which is great for packing, especially if you're traveling or you're going out and enjoying cider out or pouring it in a glass and making it a little more elegant. Yeah.
That's an incredibly important point about why we put them in cans. 20 years ago, I would have put them in bottles because cans back then for cider were not great. And the technology for cans has come on so far that it keeps it brighter and fresher, especially in the ciders that I make, the style. And I've got ciders above me up here which I've kept from our canning runs over the years. Yeah. And we had some Malice which we made 9 years ago. We popped it. It was slightly dry. It was sensational. So we say that our ciders are still very good 2 years after we've canned them.
Visitors to Winchester, who are the folks that are coming? Are they more locals? What are you seeing in that way?
Well, when we had our old tasting room, we had a lot of customers from different states come to visit us, a lot from Pennsylvania, because we were on like a back road to go into PA. We had one gentleman from New Jersey, he was English as well, and he'd come in and buy a couple of cases of cider because he loved it so much. He now works for me as part-time salesman in New Jersey. I wrote him in, and he was actually down here this weekend at our grand opening of our restaurant in Winchester. So his name's Ian Corkill. And he's done a phenomenal job. Yeah, he retired from the pharmaceutical industry. He was happily going along his business. And now he says this has given him like a new lease of life. He is very good at explaining the nuances of English style ciders as well. So we have our tasting room restaurant downtown Winchester. We get a lot of people from Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C., a lot of visitors from all over, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India, all over, and getting to know the cider experience. We have people from California, Oregon, Washington State, Canadians, and this is phenomenal for me because it just spreads the word of cider love. It's a great community, the craft beer community as well. It's very similar here in Virginia. Everybody gets on with each other, and we're all trying to help each other. It's not this cutthroat industry. We're really trying to help each other, which is incredibly important.
The fact that you're not too far from D.C. or Maryland makes it an easy destination for people to go out. So what can they actually expect at the tasting room? What does that look like? They kind of walk in and there's an opportunity for flights. Is there food?
We have a full menu. Now, our tasting room manager, she was a chef and set us all up, got our menu. It's fantastic. We're also doing some like healthier options because our ciders are vegan and gluten-free. We do flights because most people, rather than say, oh, can I just try this? So we give them a flight to 4 different ciders, and that's very popular. Right. We also have a guest cider on at all times. The first one is a French cider, so people can understand the differences of cider in the world. I'm trying to get some English cider, so if there's any people listening who can help me get some English cider, I'd love any English ciders. I reached out to Tom Oliver about getting some of his in when his distribution comes over to the US. Neil Worley as well, big fan of his. I'd love to have his, but he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't export to the US. I asked him to, but I would love some of his red hen in my cider house. It's just delicious. So yeah, we're going to mix it up from ciders around the world and also from ciders from the US. So obviously we're going to try some British and Irish ciders, some Spanish ciders, New Zealand, Australia, wherever we can get cider from.
What I like about that business model of creating a little bit of a cider bar with a larger selection than your own in-house is that you're really informing and educating the populace. It's not a threat. If anything, it gives comparison and brings them back to keep on trying new stuff.
Yeah, it widens the cider experience for our consumers. And it's funny because we have 4 taps of local beers on, wines and ready-to-drink cocktails. The cider has outsold them 8-1, which surprised me because a lot of males in our area, assuming other areas as well, I do beer festivals, don't particularly see cider as being a masculine drink, which when I'm like surprised by this. I mean, we named it the Ciderhouse. We didn't want to have it Winchester Ciderworks restaurant or tasting. We wanted the Ciderhouse because we want to have more of these in Virginia and maybe other states as well. So this was a template of what we wanted to do. It's been insanely successful. It's like this contemporary place in the middle of old country Virginia, and people had just walked in and went, wow, this is fantastic. So, yeah, we just need to make some money to make it pay now, and everything will be okay.
That's always kind of the goal in the business model. Are you attending annual festivals that people can attend besides coming to the Ciderhouse and having a tasting or purchasing it?
Next month, the Snallygaster Beer and Cider Festival. It's invitation only, and it's a great honour to be invited. Snallygaster, Snallygaster.
Okay.
It's a huge thing. They closed down downtown DC, and it's
very nice.
My next thing is I tried to export some of my ciders. I've teamed up with the Virginia Economic Export Development Program, and they gave us a grant about exporting the cider. So I've been investigating that. We've come to the size now where we're in that in-between phase where for example, our sales in Virginia, I never had a sales staff until late last year. And we were basically sold through me, word of mouth, and an online presence. And now our sales have gone up over 240% this year. And with retail chains, it's over 400%. So we're craft alternative here, especially in Virginia, North Carolina, where we are getting into places. So we're still below the parapet regarding the big boys. So we still consider ourselves small, but we submit for all these sets for the major retail chains, and so far they've been successful. So that is one direction we're going into. And the other direction is, as a massive sports fan, for listeners overseas, college football, American football in the US is enormous. And I'm a supporter of the West Virginia University Mountaineers football team. And last weekend, they had their opening game against Penn State, who are ranked number 8. And in front of a crowd of 60,000 plus, Malice, my main cider, was on sale for the first time. And it made me so proud. I was having people sending me photographs of them selling it in the stadium. And, you know, for a small company like us to get in above the corporate big boys was so good, and it made me so pleased. And it just shows you what hard work, perseverance, and have this dogged British determination to succeed. And so that is going to be my aim, to get into the Baltimore Orioles, which is my baseball team, who I love, and also the Baltimore Ravens, who aren't my football team, but I think our cider and our 522, because they play in purple and black, and our can is purple and black, would be a great fit. So that is my MO for the near future.
Yeah. And the Malice is perfect for that type of crowd. I could see it just being walked back, you know, like one can makes you want to have another. It goes down easy.
Totally. Because I'm a big music fan. I've got 11 musicians tattooed on my body. I made the elderberry, the cider with a siren. I got friends with a band from Oregon, of all places, called the Bridge City Sinners. So I thought, I'm going to make the cider for them because it would be good for them. It would be good for me. And so I made it, blended it in with the elderberries. The band absolutely loved it. And we had to change the name because we had some issues, some complaints about the label, which was their logo. So we changed it to Cider of the Siren, which is a play on one of our most famous songs. And the band love it. And so I'm going to do that with some other musicians who I've got to know, and they're really on board with it. So it's great for me to make the cider which fits their profile. I give them this cider, which they can take on tour with them, and they give me the social media love to push it. And it's been a very good connection so far with the band so far.
We'll follow along with that too. I'd like to thank you for being a guest here in this episode of Cider Chat.
I'm a big fan, and this was an honor for me to be deemed suitable enough to come onto your fantastic podcast. Truly appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Find the show notes for this here episode 428 of Cider Chat with Stephen Schuurman of Winchester Ciderworks by going to ciderchat.com. And with that, I leave you here. This is Rhea Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
We like cider. We like palms. We love orchards and having fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. We like cider. We like palms. We like orchards, having some fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Oh yes, we do. We like palms. Oh yes, we do. We love orchards, having some fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There's a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. Ba-da-da-dum. We like walking down the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Ba-da-da-dum. We like palms.
Oh yes, we do.
We like orchards, having some fun.
Yeehaw!